Hey, I can't believe we're in March already. Christmas only just seems to have gone, and of course the weather's starting to warm up. It's also starting to get a little bit drier, which means at this time of the year I start getting a lot of questions about touring motorcycles, and in particular, which bike should I get? Now, the thing is, more often than not, when people ask me this question in comments and I give them an answer, it's not what they expected. In a lot of cases, it's not what they wanted. Of course, they're usually offering, a suggestion of some big adventure tourer or touring type motorcycle that they've got in mind. And when I suggest that something smaller is probably more appropriate, it puzzles them. And sometimes they get downright annoyed. Now, I don't really have the time to be able to explain in detail in comments, why I favour certain types of motorcycle over others for touring. So we're going to have to revisit this subject again. Here we go.
Now, today I want to explain to you why I will never buy a big touring motorcycle again, not even for touring. There are a number of reasons that I'm going to go into to explain that. I'd like to point out this is purely my own perspective of motorcycle touring. It doesn't have to be yours, but I personally feel that big touring motorcycles are simply not worth it. They're more hassle than the worth. Right from the first time we swing our leg over a motorcycle and beginning our sort of motorcycle careers, if you like, we get pulled into the advertising and marketing hype of the motorcycling world. Usually we start off on small, modestly powered bikes, but then the motorcycle manufacturers tempt us with something a bit bigger, a bit faster, and we buy it and we have it for a year or two, and then they tempt us with something even bigger and faster. And since the 1970s, that is the way that motorcycle marketing has worked. When I started riding in the early 1980s, a big bike was considered to be a 750. They were considered heavyweight bikes. By the end of the 1980s, 750s had been relegated to sort of the top end of middleweight bikes, and the order of the day for a big bike was 1,000 or 1,300 cc's. So then the marketing started to concentrate on top speed and BHP until they sort of reached the top end of what were safe limits. So towards the end of the 1990s, they started to split motorcycles up into groups. Specialised machines to do certain jobs. You had your general purpose bike, you had your commuter, you had your sports bike, and of course you had the tourer. And we were conditioned to believe that in order to tour on a motorcycle, it had to be a big, powerful, big capacity motorcycle. It had to be heavy, a sort of a two-wheeled armchair. As the various manufacturers competed with each other for sales, the specifications of these tourers went up, and with it, so did the price. Until, realistically, only a gentleman of a certain age could actually afford to buy one. I mean, if it comes to a serious touring motorcycle, large capacity from one of the sort of more prestigious brands, you're not going to get much for below £20,000 these days, and some of them go above and beyond £30,000, which is the price of a small luxury car. And that is my first gripe against, single-minded touring motorcycle. They're just too damned expensive. They don't offer great value for money when you consider most guys that like to tour on motorcycles will only manage one trip a year. And even if you manage 3 or 4 trips a year, you're paying a really high premium for that privilege. I remember when I was reading up on some research for an electric vehicle video that I did a week or two back, I was reading a government website, and it was a myths sort of debunked about electric vehicles, and it said And this was relating to convenience regarding range. It said that electric vehicles are suitable for 95% of journeys that your average driver requires a car for. And I remember thinking, well, actually, if I'm spending a lot of money on a vehicle, I want a vehicle that will cater for 100% of the journeys that I want to take, not just 95% of them. But this, in a way, sort of applies to touring motorcycles because, what percentage of your journeys are going to be dedicated touring journeys? 5%? 10% maybe? And for the other 90% of the journeys that you make, that touring bike is going to be a huge compromise. Take it from someone who's had several. They are a big compromise. Most of these big tourers are just that, the behemoths. Pretty good on a motorway, but anywhere else they become a bit of a liability. They're tiring to ride because they are so big and heavy. If you stop at a junction or you're waiting to exit a car park or something like that, that bike only has to tilt about 15 degrees before the weight becomes so unmanageable you're in danger of dropping it. And I've seen people drop them in those circumstances. Parking them is a hassle. Difficult to squeeze them into a tight space like you can any other motorcycle. For a start, they usually come festooned with sort of built-in hard luggage, so they're a lot wider than a normal motorcycle. And again, when it comes to manhandling them in those situations, they are so big and heavy. It takes a huge amount of effort to move them around. In fact, going back to when this footage was shot, I remember it was a regular thing between me and my friends. You'd get on your bike on a rough sort of gravel car park. You'd try to push it backwards to sort of turn it round to get it back on the road. And you found it wouldn't budge, and the rest of us all had to pitch in and help push the bike backwards so that the rider could turn it round. That was a regular occurrence with these bikes. And what that translates into in the real world when you're not touring, if you're using it to get to work and you have to drive through traffic, or you just want to pop 2 or 3 miles down the road to the local supermarket to pick up some bread and milk, these bikes just aren't built for doing that. Yes, they can do it, but it's not convenient. It's not pleasurable. And it got to the stage with me with the 1200 GS that, I fancied taking the bike out. I would sometimes open the garage door, I'd look at it and I'd think, you know what, I just can't be bothered. I may as well walk or take the car. And then we've got the question of comfort. These are big bikes designed for munching miles hour after hour over long distances. You've paid a lot of money for them and you've got a right to expect them to be ultra comfortable. Don't count on that. We're all different shapes and sizes, and if your shape and size doesn't fit within the parameters that the manufacturers explored when they designed that bike, you will get a numb backside just as quickly as you will get it on a 125 or a 500. Paying a huge amount of money for a dedicated tourer does not guarantee rider comfort. The concept of having a huge windscreen to protect you from the wind does not guarantee that you will not get buffeted and bashed around by the wind. In fact, as time's gone on, I've discovered that non-fared bikes, when it comes to wind resistance, are far more comfortable than bikes with windscreens. A windscreen that's not designed within the parameters of your personal height will create dirty air, or what I call dirty air, and that will create turbulence which will cause buffeting. It's not the case for everyone, but it is a bit of a lottery as to whether those sort of bikes are going to provide the comfort and protection that you're looking for. Now, the next thing that the marketing hype tells us is that bikes have to be big, they have to be fast, they have to be powerful. I'll tell you from my experience, that is complete garbage. That's sales hype and nothing else. Maximum speed limits may vary in various regions of the world, but here in the UK, the maximum speed you can possibly travel on a motorway or a dual carriageway is 70 miles an hour. And with all the low speed limits now being introduced, that is becoming a rarer thing. More and more often now on dual carriageways and motorways, you find that you're limited to 50, 60, sometimes even 40 miles an hour. And with the thousands of speed cameras and average speed check cameras on our modern roads, there's no way you can sort of get around that and speed regularly without the odds catching up to you at some stage. Now, the two main excuses I get from viewers about needing a bike that, is fast is A, climbing hills. You need a powerful bike to get up steep hills. Well, anybody that's ridden in the UK around Scotland, the Lake District, the Peak District, the Yorkshire Dales and many other regions will know that even when you're riding a 125 horsepower motorcycle, for the most part, you're stuck in third, second, and regularly even first gear. Exactly the same as it would be if you were riding a 350, because the sort of weaving nature of these roads means that you can't get up to speed to get up those hills at speed. You're stuck in a low gear for most of the time. So that extra power of those big powerful bikes is of absolutely no use to you whatsoever. And the other reason that I'm given is that you need that power and speed to get yourself out of trouble in certain traffic situations on the motorways. Again, the art of competent motorcycle riding dictates that you shouldn't put yourself in those danger zones in the first place. Using excess power and excessive speed to get yourself out of a dangerous situation that your impatience has put you in is the sign of a bad rider. The only requirements of your bike is that it should be able to reach the maximum speed with relative ease and hold it there. That's all it needs to do. And then when it comes to big, powerful touring bikes, there's the other downside, fuel consumption. My GS 1200 Adventure on a good day would return about 56 miles to the gallon, which is actually very similar to what my car returns. Not particularly fuel efficient for a motorcycle. So that power and performance that you can't actually use most of the time, even when touring, comes at a huge cost that registers in your wallet or your bank account. Now again, these bikes some of them have huge ranges between fuel fill-ups, but they achieve that by having huge fuel tanks, which, yet that takes us back to the first point. It just adds to the weight and the ungainly nature of the motorcycle. I mean, the last GS Adventure that I had, I think it cost something like £46 to fill it up from empty, and that's almost 10 years ago. Now, altogether, I owned, over the years, 3 GS Adventures. I was never particularly happy with any of them. Weight, discomfort and inconvenience being the main sort of points that, I thought it was just me. And after the first one, I bought the second new improved version thinking that would sort all my issues out, and it didn't. So I then went on and bought the third one thinking that would sort the issues out, and it didn't. I just found the whole experience of these bikes grossly dissatisfying. Like everybody else that gets into these bikes, I've been sold a dream. You see the marketing videos. A huge, powerful, shiny bike festooned with luggage, a good-looking chap at the helm, and an attractive, slim Doris sitting on the back with a big smile on her face as her long hair blows in the wind. A glorious sunset in the background, fantastic scenery, and a billiard table smooth road. Yes, you do have moments like that on these bikes where you feel like king of the road, but often they are just moments. And yet, that's the dream we all have in our heads when we think about motorcycle touring. But that clip is just a few seconds long, and we all know that the realities of life are not like that. Riding these bikes on pothole-rich roads is not enjoyable. Trying to coax a bike like that up a 1 in 4 hill with a series of switchbacks and hairpin bends is not fun. Dreading the next junction or traffic light, which you know is on a very steep incline, and it's gonna be hell trying to hold that bike upright while you're waiting for your escape onto the main road, is not fun. And straining to manoeuvre one of these behemoths on a potholed gravel car park, sweating in your riding gear while you try to wrestle it into a tight parking spot, is not fun. Initially, it feels like a sort of an adventure, just one of those things that you have to do to be able to enjoy yourself. But as time goes on, it wears you down. And I certainly got to the point with my last GS adventure where it just seemed like too much effort riding it. The fun had gone out of motorcycling. I'd lost that enjoyment that I'd had as a younger man riding bikes. And then if you cast your mind back to the beginning of this video, there was a young lady riding a Kawasaki 250 Ninja, the daughter of the guy that I was riding with. And that trip was a turning point for me. That little bike was by no means powerful, and it certainly wasn't fast. I think the top speed wringing its neck in the right situation was about 80 miles an hour. I can't honestly remember how many miles we covered over those few days on that trip. We rode at our normal speeds, and all three bikes negotiated the exact same roads and terrain. Yet we never had to make any allowances for that little bike. It kept up no problems at all. We never had to slow down or wait for it. As you saw, for the most part, she was carrying her own luggage. And I can honestly say that that little 250 managed that trip just as well as those two 1200cc Tourers that were accompanying it. It stuck in my mind, and the following year I commenced that long sort of process of downsizing bikes. And in the stable of 6 bikes that I have now, a 900cc bike, 2 1200cc bikes, a 650, a 500 and a 350, the 2 bikes that I gravitate to the most are the 350 and the 500. Because for the 5% or 10% that I need these bikes to go touring with, they will do everything I need them to do. They'll carry luggage, they'll travel long distances, and they'll keep up with traffic, whilst at the same time sipping fuel in small amounts. They're light, they're manageable, they're easy to park up at your destination. Manhandling them on gravelled car parks or laybys isn't a major hassle. And then for the rest of the time, for normal riding, they do that even better. An area where, for me, big, heavy, powerful Tourers fell flat on their faces. They're relatively small and they don't take up too much space in the garage. They're a pleasure to just pull out of the garage at a moment's notice and go and do a small Asda run. They might not be capable of holding 90 or 100 miles an hour on the autobahns in Germany, but that's a place I never intend going, so it's not going to be an issue for me. They are perfect, economical, low-priced, lightweight, all-rounders that can do anything and still do it well. Enjoyable touring is not about size and horsepower and speed. It's about enjoying yourself, creating a memory that will last for the right reasons. And to get maximum enjoyment out of your bike, it needs to serve you well when you're not touring. These smaller bikes have brought enjoyment back into motorcycling that I thought I'd lost many years ago. And for that reason, I will never buy a big touring bike ever again. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. And obviously I would also appreciate it if you would consider leaving a like, and if you're not already a subscriber to this channel, subscribe now. Hit the notification bell and ensure that your notifications are enabled. That way you'll be informed whenever I upload a new video. I will of course be back next week, so until then have a great weekend, and if you're riding, ride safely.